helping keep modern Manx history alive.
Mr. Crowe, what's the current situation between you and the unions?
Well, it's a matter that's been dealt with by the executive rather than by the board. So I'm, shall we say, have a watching brief over this. But the executive and the union, the CWU, have been working to try and reach agreement since April last year with various proposals that have so far failed to reach any satisfactory conclusion.
And the union has gone public saying they're not happy with the way they're being treated.
Well, I can understand the union because I've worked with Mr. Pullinger on the pension scheme last year, and I found him to be a very good person to work with. So I can understand he has his union staff to be concerned about. So I can quite understand that he has concerns for his membership. But what I see my role as in the post office, that we have not only to have to look after the employees of the business, we have to look after the customers, and we are part of the wider government role as well. So we have obligations across different sectors of the population. So whereas the union are looking solely at their members' interests, I would like them to look at the wider interest, shall we say, Isle of Man government, Isle of Man PLC, the whole business of the island. So what's good for government and good for the post office is hopefully good for the membership as well.
Currently, there is no pay increase offered, is that correct?
No.
And this is now your final offer sort of thing, you're not moving from that?
Well, we've said we are adopting a pay freeze, but we have talked about other situations which may be possible, and we've looked at the allowances as to whether some of those can be brought in, and so there may be room for manoeuvre in that area. But that's why we haven't closed the door completely. But what we are conscious of is that the Isle of Man government have adopted a pay freeze. They're trying to encourage people in all sectors of the community and government to have this we're all in it together sort of thing. Now, whereas the post office is profitable, we see government is down on their revenues by about £100 million. So we, by being profitable, can contribute 50% of our earnings to government, so we can help government in a different sort of way.
What were your profits last year?
They're about 1.8 million.
So you can probably see the unions and your staff would like to be acknowledged to have a part in that success story.
Oh yes, I can quite understand the motivation, but what I see the role of the post office is not to look at 1 year at a time. The board looks strategically at 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, because the younger people coming in now will have a career of 25 years. So we need to be able to say to them, we're building a business, we're reinvesting in the business, we need new technology, new equipment, new vehicles, new premises, improving premises. We always need to reinvest in the business, so we can't just say, let's pay the profits and pay increases. We have to take a bigger and wider view.
The union took what appears to be the bold step of asking for binding arbitration. You've rejected that. I mean, is that not possibly the logical way to go? Someone's right, someone's going to get it or not get it, and this way it would be outside of your particular control because by the very nature it's binding.
Well, that's what you've just said. We would be delegating our control away from our responsibilities, and I believe that we should retain the control. We should have face-to-face negotiations and resolve it between ourselves. Once you give it to a third party, it's totally out of your control.
It seems unusual from the union's point of view when I've spoken to them that to make this offer they were very surprised you turned it down.
Well, as part of the agreement with the CWU, we have the option to either go to arbitration or not to go to arbitration, so we've decided not to go to arbitration.
Do you think you're handling this correctly?
Yes, I think we're taking a very responsible attitude because, as I've said to you, we want to protect the business of the post office, we want to protect jobs for the future. I know directly of other departments who are losing staff, who are redundancies, there are redeployments, and I think we've got to look at the whole of the Isle of Man PLC because I think...
You've made it clear, though, that the door is still open. Are you prepared to tell us what sort of offers are still available then?
Well, as I said to you, I'm sitting on the top of the pile. I have an executive directorship and management to deal with the details, so I would not like to go into any detail.
Do you think this will lead to strike action?
Well, I sincerely hope not, because I think one thing about the Isle of Man post office, it touches everybody in the Isle of Man. Everybody gets a letter. There's local post offices in every community. There's a very good working relationship and goodwill between the postal staff and the public and businesses. So I'd be very sorry if it did go to a strike.
But you must be losing goodwill with your staff over this.
I think the majority of staff recognise that there's a bigger issue out here. We have to look at the big issue, the Isle of Man PLC, Isle of Man's future, Isle of Man as a place to do business. And I think many of the postal workers recognise that what's good for the Isle of Man is good for them in the longer term. We're not looking short term, we're looking at the long-term future.
You are slightly autonomous, though, from government. You said it yourself. So, I mean, you do have the power to make a pay rise or make some concessions if you wanted to. You're not completely constrained by the government order of no pay rises at all.
We have a certain level of autonomy, but there are directives that government can give us.
Are you being directed by government then?
No, we are not yet being directed by government, but I think we want to, as I said, control the negotiations. We want to control it so that we as a board stand alone and stand behind what we believe is right. And as I said, we believe we're doing the right thing. We want to bring the staff along with us. We want to encourage them to support the post office, the long-term business of the post office, and say what's good for us is good for the island.
This is a cash cow part of the business, isn't it? I mean, you do, as you said, made huge profits.
Yes, but that's because we've built up a good business over the years and we've diversified. We're not just now in mail and parcels. We have integrated mailing systems, we have a philatelic bureau, we have licensing. We've diversified across the business. We've changed over the years. So instead of having a sole part of our business, we are now a widely diversified business. We have very big business clients. And
there's lack of competition, isn't there, on the Isle of Man compared with other Crown dependencies like Guernsey's having big problems down there with the competitions come in, and other people have picked out the profitable part of the business and are running with that.
Well, that's what we have to make sure. We work under the Post Office Act, so we need to be sure that we are responsible people and work within the Post Office Act. I mean, there's always competition in parcels and other goods that can be delivered to the Isle of Man, so we're not the sole supplier. So we have to try and protect our business base, our recognised clients. We have to build the goodwill and continue to build the goodwill, and anything that can damage the goodwill and the good name of the Post Office, I'd be very sorry to see. So that's why I would like the unions and the CW to realise and to accept that we in the Post Office are not trying to be difficult. We're trying to see the long-term future of the Post Office as good for the business, good for the island, good for the employees, so we build a strong, positive base for the Post Office, not this year, next year, 5 years, 10 years, 25 years.
Yeah, I think you made that point very clear. You definitely won't be going for any sort of arbitration then. You will be leaving this to sort out between the two parties, is that
Yes.
right? And you're convinced you're handling this the correct way?
Yes.
Please subscribe to the Isle of Man TV archive channel. Thank you.